Be my guest, be my guest, be my guest with Sean Boy Joe. Be my guest, be my guest, be my guest with Sean Boy Joe.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Be My Guest podcast channel with me, your boy, Sean Boy Joe, back for another podcast video. And I am joined today by somebody who has quite literally been there and done it all. He's an actor, producer, writer, performer, musician, singer. Oh, gosh, I can go on and on and on, but we'll be here for hours. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome the fabulous Christopher Lillicrap. Hello, Christopher.
Hello there. God,
How
after
are
that,
we
I
today?
feel knackered already.
Yes, I know. That's a long list of things, but it is true. Now, before we start, explain to everybody where you are, because you're not over here, are you, in England? You're somewhere else.
I am on a small Greek island called Symi,
Right.
which, if you look on the map, is about an hour north of Rhodes in the Aegean. Yeah.
And that's where you reside now, don't you?
I spend a lot of time here now. Yeah, my wife and I came here 40 years ago for 2 weeks holiday that completely changed our lives. We were told we couldn't have children. Jeanette had had a lot of operations and we were told to forget it. So we thought we'll just have nice holidays. And we came here for 2 weeks. And very long story short, we ended up going back with the ruin of a house and a baby. Because the old lady said, well, where are your children? Well, we can't have any. Yes, everybody can have children. No, we can't. No, you can. Have you been to the monastery at Panamitis? Did you light a candle? Yeah. Well, you'll have a baby. It's very simple. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. It was 2 weeks that changed our lives completely.
Wow.
And oddly enough, we probably wouldn't have bought the old house if we'd known we were going to have a baby, but we did. And he met his wife here. And he got married in our house. And it was a sort of, when various things happen in your life that change it, Jeanette had a stroke, you reevaluate and say, well, hang on a minute, why am I rushing around like a proverbial, why don't I just settle down? Hasn't quite worked out that way. So as I was telling you, I started writing a load of songs.
Indeed,
but nevertheless, yeah, it's a different way of life here. People are different. It's interesting. Everybody knows me. There's Christopher. Yeah,
that's it.
It's just nice. Yeah.
So the tagline, whatever happened to, is out the window now where you are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, what happened to him? He lives up there. What are you talking about?
Exactly, yes. Yes. Normally, I would ask guests in the beginning, as we go through a timeline, what it was like for them growing up and the sort of background. So you've come a bit forward, so we'll go back a little bit because we are going to talk about all the stuff you've done in terms of children's TV and everything you've produced and written for and present day, and we'll come on in a moment to talk about your career in teaching, because that is your early career. But talk to me a little bit about wee Christopher and your growing up days and your background. Were you from that sort of performing arts background?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. Mum and Dad were what would now be regarded as elderly parents.
Right.
Mum was 42 when she had me.
Oh, right.
They had never been married, either of them. They met down in Plymouth. She was on holiday at the end of the war. I'm a boomer. And they met for 3 days. And he asked her to marry him. It's one of those extraordinary sort of, I ought to write the book. Yes. In fact, when he say he asked her to marry him, he just said, well, you are going to marry me, aren't you? And she said, well, I need to think about it. And the next day she thought about it and said, yeah, okay.
Took her 1 day to think about it, right?
Yeah. And went back and told her elderly parents, who she was sort of looking after, that she was marrying this dockyard labourer in Plymouth. And, I think the proverbial hit the fan, but apart from that, they got married. And 3 years later, they had me, and I was an only child. And not only was I an only child, I was an only grandchild. And so being spoilt didn't quite enter into it, but I got a feeling that that's where the performing came from, because my earliest memory, and everybody says, what's your first memory? And you think, well, maybe somebody told me this, but they didn't. And I asked my mother if it was true, is walking. I remember walking, standing up at the end of a playpen, walking across it to rounds of applause, which was probably a killer. That's what determined everything. Yeah. I then remember turning around, walking back and falling over. And I even remember there was a budgie in a cage there. My mother was amazed when I said, is that true? Yeah. He was called Joey. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. And that's my first memory. But I was an only child, and we lived with my I was born in Plymouth, but then we moved up to Yorkshire for 4 years, and then we moved back down to Plymouth. When my father got work in the dockyard there again. And that was me. And my education, I went to primary school. I wasn't particularly bright, but for some bizarre reason, unknown to almost everybody, and maybe the bloke who did the marking, I, having come regularly 22nd out of 25 kids in the class, passed the 11 plus.
Oh, right.
I went off to this place called the grammar school. Yeah. And that was when I started sort of performing in plays and things. And when you got the career person, they said, what do you want to be? I said, well, an actor. No, you need to do something.
They all say that, yeah.
Need a proper job, yeah. You need a proper job.
Go work in a bank.
So they diverted me to teaching. You can go and teach drama. That'll get it out of your system, sort of thing. But
Right.
I did go and train to be a teacher, and I was offered my own drama department. But actually, no, I left all that to drive a van for the Brian Way Children's Theatre Company, and that's how I then got into that line of work, if you like. And Nottingham Playhouse, I worked with all sorts of people there. That was incredible, because I'm part of their theatre and education company, and I got to play parts in other plays with people like John Price and Zoe Wanamaker, Ralph Nosek, people like that. And that was my training in education, really. It was fantastic. And then I applied to go on play school and failed.
As you do.
Yeah. Well, I did the audition. I made everybody in the studio laugh and walked away thinking, well, I've cracked that one.
Right.
Got a letter saying, terribly sorry. And then Judy Whitfield phoned me up 2 weeks later and said she'd seen my audition. Would I go down to London and talk to them? Because they were doing a series called Playboard.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted somebody who could sing and play and to front it. And I thought, well, hang on, but I failed the audition. And she told me later, this is awful. She said, you know why? She said, the discussion was had around the table. You were too interesting.
Yeah. Too popular. Yeah.
Too interesting.
Yeah.
Apparently, because I wouldn't just go, what's through the round window? I mean, I was the bloke who go, what's through the round window then? No,
Right.
it's no good.
Yeah.
So, and there was the same thing happened with, so I got my own series. And then I auditioned for Rainbow and failed that one. But then got phoned up by Charlie Warren, the producer, and said, we've got a series we want you to do called We'll Tell You a Story. And it's your own series. Okay, right. And you can still write Rainbow if you want to, write some Rainbow things. You can appear on it. And that's what happened to me. That's how it all worked out. Yeah.
So auditions that didn't work and then led on to other things.
Yes.
Incredible.
2 auditions that didn't work, but changed my life because I got better jobs.
Right. Well, out of them, exactly. I mean, we have to say this is the first time that Play School has been mentioned in this series, everybody. I always say Play School should not be mentioned, but it has been. The amount of people I've had from Play School in the first series.
Well, what was interesting, though, is, you see, I've only realised it recently. Somebody said to me, in those days, for people now, it would be hard to comprehend.
Right.
You didn't, unless you were Morecambe and White, when Morecambe and White shifted from the BBC to ITV, that was major news. It was huge. It was massive.
City and Sweep, yeah.
Yeah, you didn't do that. You either worked for the BBC or you worked for ITV.
Right, yeah.
Me, for some reason, I actually worked for both.
Yeah.
So I'm doing Playboy, I'm doing my series on Thames, I'm then doing Sunday morning shows called Knock Knock on the BBC, and I'm working for both sides. And nobody sort of noticed,
right?
Because that was forbid at the time. You never did. You were either BBC or you were ITV, and there the twain should meet. But I did.
You still are in some ways nowadays. If you work for the BBC, you work for the BBC, but ITV is
Yeah.
ITV. You don't really cross over. But it must have been quite a nice thing to know that you could branch out to all sorts of things.
Yeah. Well, the Saturday morning, the kitchen thing's classic, isn't it? The James Martin on one side
Yeah, yeah,
and Saturday morning kitchen on the other. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And your Beeb or your ITV. Simple as
yeah,
that.
absolutely. So you've come far forward to all of the things that you had that started you in the world of kids TV, and you spoke a little bit about how you were initially not accepted for Rainbow, but then you would make occasional appearances later down the line. You would write for it,
And write it as well. I
yeah,
wrote quite a lot. Yeah.
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 So what are your memories of working on Rainbow in its later days?
Roy Skelton, who did the voices of, and I've always talked about this, if you
Mhm.
listen to the tapes, he did the voice of George and Zippy.
Yeah.
He did both. And you listen to the recording, and I still don't. I used to watch him sat in the booth there doing it because he was watching them, the puppets,
Hmm.
and doing the voices. And they interrupt each other. And at times you would swear they talk over each other. And I've no
Yes.
idea how he did that. Because he did it in one take. He didn't record George and then record Zippy. He actually did it all almost like live. And you listen to it, and that was a skill, that was an art that was just extraordinary. And you never saw his face, of course, you never saw the man.
No.
But it was brilliant. And you think, hang on, George just interrupted Zippy and they spoke over it. That's impossible. He's
Yeah.
bivocal. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my biggest memory of Rainbow.
It's a real skill to have. And
Yeah.
one of the things that Ronnie always talks about, because he was operating, Zippy at the time, is that nowadays he can walk down the street and nobody would batter an eyelid, and it's a lovely
No.
secret that he has. And that
Yeah.
was something that Roy could, keep as a secret as
Yeah.
well. So you were talking about your early days in education and how you were teaching children. That never kind of left, even when I was in school, because I get palpitations when I talk about this particular program and this guy behind me, because it reminds me of the dreaded going into the classroom on reception, where the big TV would come out, and all of a sudden, here we have to sit and watch Numbertime. And I
Hey!
loved it, absolutely loved it. It was the only thing that ever kept me in school was Numbertime and Mr. El Nombre behind me. So talk to us, because that will be what will interest my generation of people in the
Yeah.
90s. Talk to us about why or how that came about.
Had a big student following, El Nombre,
Right.
too. He was a
Right.
bit of a student icon.
Mhm.
And I remember a teacher saying to me, I've been waiting to meet you. We were filming something in the school. Said, because I want to wring your neck. She said, because if I hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, again, I'm going to drive. The only thing I've got to say is that by the end of term, they all know how to count to 10.
Yes.
Because they just followed it. The
Yeah.
little interstitial I stuck in there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8,
Mhm.
9, 10. And then El Nombre came about as a sort of, Zorro thing. And then we made the entertainment series about it, and there was a lot of who and ahhing between the BBC Education Department, the BBC Children's Department, and we had to go to this big meeting with, I shan't say their names, but two very powerful women.
Right.
And I had to go into this meeting with them, and they were arguing. One was from education and one was from, and basically Children's TV said, well, they thought it would be a good entertainment series, but it mustn't have any education in it. And the education department was saying, but it's got to have, and they were, and I remember in the middle of these two women having this, dare I say it, cat fight, I stopped it. I said, just a minute, can we just stop here? I said, when this meeting is over, you both will still have a job. If you don't make this series, I won't.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I'd just like you to bear that in mind. And they went,
Yeah.
oh. I said, all good programs for children have some kind of educational element in it, but it doesn't have to be the main theme in the way it was during Numbertime.
Mhm.
So, in Numbertime, as we'd have a pizza,
Yeah.
and you
Right.
could divide it, and that's how you got into halves and quarters and all those kind of things. We won't do that. We'll just have a laugh. But there might just be some little things that sneak in. Oh, all right then. And I became the mediator between these two women about how to do it. Because I remember when I was at Thames, doing would tell you a story. I had a story, and this character had a big hat. And I said, I'd written in it, it was a very impressive hat. And Charlie went, whoa, hang on. Now then, we can use that word. The kids you're talking to don't know that word. But to be able to do it, we have to make impressive say what it means.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he said, right. A lot of people say you can't use that word with, 4-year-olds. Actually, you can if you actually do it. So there are ways of, wow, that hat, it's just impressive. Is it impressive? It is impressive. Look at it. It's enormous. It's got beautiful flowers. You have just described what impressive means. Then we can put it in. Oh, yeah. And that basically is education. So the whole lot of kids walking around afterwards saying, I've just seen a really impressive program, Mum.
Yeah.
Mum's going, where'd you get that from?
Yeah. Just the little things, isn't it? Yeah. So did you ever imagine how, massive that show would become? Or,
No.
you've taken the character from the program, it's a standalone show. And after everybody saying to you, oh, that's not going to work in that format, it actually did.
It did. But the BBC did not then run it as much as we wanted them to. It got very good audience ratings.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they didn't run it. I remember there were all sorts of, it was at the time when lots of people in the B were getting very frightened about political correctness and things going on. And we had a big discussion as to whether or not little Juan should wear sandals.
Oh, right.
Right? So if he's barefoot, are we characterizing Mexican children as impoverished?
I see.
Should he be wearing sandals? And there was this huge intellectual discussion about that. And it was just me at the point said, can I just point something out? What? He's a gerbil.
Yeah.
He's a gerbil. They tend not to wear sandals. But I mean, that's just me. I'm just throwing that in.
Yeah. And he's a character on TV. He's
a character on TV. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the children will notice at all what you're talking about.
No.
It's not the first thing on their mind, is it?
And we had a wedding with Constanza Bonanza, but they wouldn't let us. It couldn't take place in a church, right? Because this might offend people from various other religions. I said, well, hang on a minute. Mexican is largely Catholic country, but never mind. No, it could be done in the council offices. That they'd have to get there. Right. Okay. And then along came. We couldn't do Halloween either. That was the other thing we weren't allowed to do because of spooks and I thought Harry Potter would never have got on the BBC. He'd have never got there because he would have been, oh, we can't do that. It's witches and ghouls and all that kind of thing, It wouldn't have happened. Yeah, there were lots of discussions about the Masked Avenger.
But it did happen, and we have you to thank for it, of course. And the BBC were good. They did produce a lot of merchandise around it. There were tapes made for schools and books and all sorts of things. Yeah. So it did have a longevity, and people. It's one of those programs. I think because the character is so synonymous that they just remember like Rainbow. It's never really gone away, has it? Really?
No, I used to put in what I always did with El Nombre was in the education series for the teachers, would put in a few jokes basically for the teachers.
Yeah.
It would be a bit over the edge because I remember one of the teachers saying to me, oh, thank you. You put in some things we find really funny. The kids don't know they're funny, but what we do. Because
we've got to sit through this now, yeah.
We've got to sit through it every year.
Yeah, every day of the year, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The kids will see it this term and they won't see it next term, but we will.
Yes.
Again.
Yes. There's only 13 episodes, wasn't there, or something like that?
Yeah. So we're all waiting for that joke to come up, you know.
Yeah, see if the kids actually get it, after watching
Yeah,
it 100 times. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Uh, how things change. But so yeah, you have had such a longevity in kids TV, from producing it, writing it. I mean, what was your favorite thing to actually work on in that crazy world of kids telly?
Whoa,
That's a question, isn't it?
that is a question. What was my favorite thing? I think the first series I ever did for Thames called "We'll Tell You a Story,"
Right.
um, which
Explain the
actually could
prominence
have
of
been.
that program for those who don't know about it.
It was called "We'll Tell You a Story." That was basically it.
Right.
Um, I wrote about 80% of it. There were stories, and there were stories in songs. Um, there were mimed stories. It was different ways of telling lots and lots of different stories.
Hmm.
And I think that and Busker, which got a bit lost in the archives, but we'll tell you a story. I think probably from the series of stuff I did was my favourite.
So it's a bit of a play on the Jackanory kind of thing.
It was. We'd made the first series.
Right.
I was in Denmark doing cabaret with my wife, Jeanette. And I got a call from Audrey Starrett. She said, sit down because the head of ITV has just seen this. And do you think you could produce, 52? Why? She said, he wants to run it every week all year. Oh, okay. Suddenly my life was about to change. I was going
Hmm.
to be um, and I came back and of course the ITV strike happened.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes. And the next series got pushed back. The only series I ever got paid for that I never made, which was great. And then we made altogether, I think we made 5 series of it. But by that time, they changed the head of children's at Thames. Um, she got the axe, and somebody else had come in and said, "No, I don't want to do that," and that all changed. But it was the most creative, I think, having to do that all the time quickly was probably that. And the other thing that nobody will remember, unless they dig it out and stick it out on Christmas, was a show called Follow the Star, uh,
Um,
where I played the Angel Gabriel and Tony Robinson played the Angel of Chicago. Yeah.
oh, there you go. That's a match made in heaven, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll have to dig that out around Christmas. So there you go. But
Yeah, they should do.
another thing we'll come on to because lots of things happen for you around Christmas. You've spent a decade of your life in pantomime as the Panto Dame, and we'll come on to
Yeah.
that very shortly. But you've won awards for some of your Christmas shows as well, haven't you? Christmas Cat and the Pudding. Tell me
Oh,
about
the
it.
Pudding Pirates. Yes, the
Yes.
best thing Jeanette and I ever wrote. It's even been done here on this Greek island in Greek.
Yeah.
They translated it. Yeah.
Right.
And they did it in Greek to great success. Yeah. Yeah, Christmas Cat, best thing we ever wrote. And it was
And
Jeanette's
various
idea.
awards for that as well, wasn't there?
Initially, I was working at the Watermill Theatre near Newbury,
Right.
and they were looking for a Christmas show, and they were talking about it, and we walked in. Jeanette said, "Oh, it looks like a ship." And I thought, "Oh yeah, a ship. Now what? Father Christmas, what kind of ship? Oh, the Santa Claus. Yeah, the Santa Claus." And it just all kicked off, and we wrote it. Yeah, Christmas Cat and the Pudding Pirates. Yeah, it got awards and things, and then we wrote Monty Moonbeam's Magnificent Mission, which got the TMA award. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. No, but Christmas Cat's been done in America, um, in upstate New York. It's been done in Greece. It's now we've released the amateur rights, so if any amateur groups want to do it, they can get hold of it and
There
they
you
can
go.
actually.
It's award winning. It's
Yeah.
global now.
Oh, it is
Absolutely.
global, yes, and it's economical too because you only need a cast of 5
Oh, well, there you go.
and children. You're laughing. Yeah,
There you go. There you go. Never work with children and animals, but work with 5 of them.
a cat
Absolutely.
and a cat and a load of kids. That'll do it. Yeah,
Cat and a load of kids. That seems right up my street. So let's go on to the panto work that you've been in, because I love talking about panto. It's one of these, old family traditions that only we have, to thank for it. It's quintessentially British. Nobody else really understands
No,
it.
try explaining it to an American. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
But it's just, it's great fun, and it's, as we were talking, before we started, we were talking about the kids TV and how it's changed. And one of the things that I can say is that, really panto hasn't. And that's
No.
a good thing, because it's accessible to
Yes.
all ages. And you've spent, a decade of your life in panto doing, playing the Dane in panto.
Yes. And that happened by accident, thanks to the late, great Ian Lavender.
Oh, right.
Because we were producing Aladdin in Cambridge. We'd been producing pantomimes for quite some time,
Right.
and we'd written Aladdin, and it was one of the great jokes. And we have understudies for every part. There's somebody ready to go on if Wishy Washy falls ill or whatever.
Right.
And with Ian, we realised with Ian, well, we didn't need an understudy really, because he was never going to be ill. He wasn't going to. That wasn't going to happen. And so we had a joke between us, me and Ian. He said, "Well, I'll tell you what." He said, "If you don't want to get somebody to do it, because it'll be a waste of time," he said, "if I get ill, it's you." And I went, "Oh yeah, all right then." No, not thinking for a minute. And we were a great company for having gags. And I was driving from the show we were producing in Warwick the night before Christmas Eve. I was driving down. I remember it was on the M42, and my phone rang, and the company manager said, "Chris, you need to come to Cambridge." "Why?" "Ian's not well." I thought, "Oh yeah.
Pull the other one.
Yeah, this is a wind up. This is a wind up. No, seriously, Chris. Yeah, okay. I'll go via Cambridge just to keep them happy. There's some sort of setup here. I'm going to walk in and it's going to be, way or whatever." Well, I walked in, it wasn't, because the man was not well. He was not very well at all. And he was fighting it, saying, "I've got to go on and go." And they go, "No, you can't, Ian." And he at some point prior to this, he'd had the big C. So
Right.
and he wasn't in good shape. And I thought, oh God, he can't. And his wife, Mickey, saying, he can't go on. And so then the company manager says, "Well, who's the understudy?" And everybody just turns and looks at me. I go, "What? Oh my God. Oh, well, I'm 5 foot nothing. He's 6 foot whatever.
Yeah.
I'm in the costume for a kickoff." And they're saying, "That's all right. We'll make them work." Whoa. And everybody, for some reason, because Jeanette and I'd written it, assumed I knew it.
Oh, right. Okay.
Well, I'd never performed it. Did I
You
know
just
it?
wrote it. Yeah.
I just wrote it. I didn't, yeah. And forget the dancing and the singing and everything else. So Christmas Eve. And I think, my God, what do I do? So they stitch me into this costume. They go, "Right, we'll take this out and we'll take this in and we'll do that. We'll make it shorter and just, you have one less costume here and all that kind of thing."
Right.
And it's kicking off. And in the middle of it, Jeanette phones me up and says, "Chris, the dishwasher's broken down." I said, "That's the least of our problems." "Why?" "Well, this is what's about to happen." Oh my God. So I remember standing in the wings and hearing somebody go out and said, "Unfortunately," and all these people are booked for Christmas Eve, haven't they, to see Ian Lavender.
Of course.
"Unfortunately, the Star Assembly is unable to get you." And you hear a collective, "Oh," you think, "Oh, that's good. I'm going
all
out
the
for that."
grown-ups thinking,
Yeah, I'm
we
looking
got
at
the Dad's Army.
but
we
the
get?
producer, Christopher Lillicrap, will actually be taking his place. And then you hear about, going on,
Yeah.
And I remember standing in the wings thinking, what does she sound like? I don't know what she sounds like. The voice. I don't know what the voice is. Hang on, I'll turn this phone off. Right, it's stopped. I remember standing there trying to go through what the words might be, what was the first scene, everything else, and saying, I don't know what she sounds like. I have no idea. How
Hmm.
am I going to speak? I don't know. And then the cue came and I went on and I started speaking. And looking back on it, I did things in that show I'd probably sacked people for. I had a ball. I had an absolute hoot. And of course, all the cast were on, wow, what's going to happen now? And they were moving me about when I wasn't in the right place. And we got laughs out of that.
Hmm.
And I did 2 shows. And by the end of the second show, I mean, I didn't need to drive home. I could have flown. I was having an absolute ball.
Wow.
And I remember driving home, and Christmas Day was off. And by Boxing Day, Ian was able to go on again.
Right.
And I remember driving out. I got home and said to Jeanette, we've got a problem. Why? Because I've just had the time of my life.
Yeah.
This is just wow. And I'd given
You
up
want to
performing.
continue doing this?
Oh, I'd given up performing for
Yeah.
ages.
Yeah.
Anyway, forgot about it. We were producing in Basingstoke as well. We had the meeting in April about, right, who are we going to cast, what are we going to do, and everything else. And the management sat around and they said, oh, there's only one thing, Chris, about this. They were doing Aladdin again.
Mhm.
And there's somebody, we'd like you to try and get as Dame if you can. I said, oh, right. Who do you want then? They said, you.
Uh,
Oh. Oh. And they said, we'd actually like to do Mother Goose. Oh, well, in terms of dames, Mother Goose is Hamlet. You work your way up to Mother Goose. You don't start with it.
no, right, exactly.
We'd like to do, and you want me to do it. And I'm thinking, oh, I don't know, because we're producing in 3 places. I can't do that
Yeah.
as well, whatever. And I come out and I said to my production team, I said to Paul, I said, we can't do that. And he said, well, actually, we can. What? Yeah, we've been talking and we think, hang on a minute, this is a stitch up. Somebody had seen what I did in Cambridge and they had reported back, and somebody somewhere had done a bit of a video, whatever. Now and that's how it happened. And that's how I
Wow.
started to play Dame, thanks to Ian, bless him.
Wow.
And that was the first one I did with Keith Chegwin. It was Mother
Wow.
Goose.
Well, there you go. What a person to perform with, Keith Chegwin.
Oh, it was great. He did a tap dance, and he said, nobody knows I can tap, do they? No, come on, let's do it.
Uh-huh.
The choreographer said, he's a brilliant tap dancer. Nobody would have known that. Yeah, come on, let's do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, that's a story. I mean, that's one for the grandkids. That is a story, isn't it? Really.
And the reason is I went down to watch the play at the panto in Plymouth at the time, before after I'd done the thing in Cambridge, to
Mhm.
see some Tudor Davis, who I thought was one of the greatest dames I've ever seen. And I went in to see him and said, oh, great show, love that, that. And after 15 minutes, he said, you've come to see me and you've just talked about everything that happened to you in Cambridge before Christmas. You've got a problem. Yes. And it was interesting when I said to him I didn't know what she was going to sound like. He said, your mother. He said, I've come to this conclusion. The only reference point for a woman, as blokes have, is their mothers. So
Right.
you probably found yourself saying things like, because I told you to, because
Mhm.
that's what she said to you.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I said, yeah, little phrases like that you will find come out and you think, where the hell did that come from? It came
Mhm.
from mum.
Right. You're just imitating. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So you have the wonderful Ian Lavender to thank. All those people in the audience
Yes.
thinking they were coming to watch someone off Dad's Army, and they ended
Yep.
up watching someone off Rainbow.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not what
Wow.
not what they paid for, but nobody else for their money back. So we're all right. Yeah.
No, well, it worked out. It worked out, and sadly, as Ian Lavender did have a lot of health issues, you went on to have several of your own, which is why you couldn't no longer perform in panto.
No, not really. Well, yeah, my own. Jeanette had a stroke,
Right.
and something like, and she was in shows like Singing in the Rain with
Hmm.
Tommy Steele, City of Angels, which got the award in the West End,
Hmm.
and had a stroke where she lost all speech, which is about the worst thing you could do to an actress and singer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Completely. I mean, it's come back now, but not in the way
Right.
she couldn't have this conversation with you.
Right. Okay.
She can understand everything you say, and that's part of her frustration is she wants to tell you, and she will eventually be able to.
Hmm.
But it'll take time. When something like that happens in your life, you think, hang on a minute, what's important? Why am I rushing around doing all this stuff?
Hmm.
Maybe it's not such a good idea. Maybe we pull back a bit. And so what do? Well, we get rid of the mortgage and we help the kids get somewhere to live and boom, boom, you know. And
That's
we
one of the reasons why you're living where you are now, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that is, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And a different way of life, which was supposed to be an easy retirement, but as I told you earlier, it is an easy retirement, except I've got a single coming out next March,
Yes.
possibly
Right.
an album.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
not
You've got a lot
not that
going on.
easy. Yeah.
No, absolutely. You're not out of the retirement yet. Whatever happened to Christopher, he's here still. He's absolutely here. Tell the story, the fascinating story that you told me as we were doing our pre-chat, which led you to the new single that is coming out next year.
Well, I'd started writing songs again because of a particular, I told you, a guitar. The guitar I used to use, those watching will remember, it was a sunburst cherry red Ibanez. And you look at the early pictures of Playboard and we'll tell you a story in Flicks, it's there. And it got broken when filming for the BBC. It got repaired, but it was never the same, didn't sound the same at all. And I looked everywhere. I phoned Ibanez in the days before internet in Japan and said, any chance of getting one? They said, yeah, you can have a blue one, a pink one, a black one, but you can't have a cherry red. We're not allowed to make them anymore. And I didn't understand why. I found out years later. I hadn't written anything for, I remember writing a show for the Millennium and I played the guitar with my mate at my son's wedding here in 2012. But apart from that, I hadn't picked up and strummed or done anything. Jeanette and I are walking down a street in Athens and she points to something in a music shop that I see. There are all these instruments hanging up, just sticking out, violins, cellos, all kinds of things. And she points and says, look at that. And sticking out is this cherry red body of the guitar. And no, not possible. It can't be. So I went in and looked. Not only was it the cherry red sunburst Ibanez, but it was a 12-string. Oh my God. And the bloke in the shop says to me, you do know that's very old, don't you? I said, I know I have one.
Yeah.
Back in the
You're as old
50s.
as it.
Yeah. I said, whose is it? He said, it's mine. But I'm selling it. I said, why? He said, my wife has had enough. I've got 12 guitars and she says I've got to get rid of some. So I'm selling that one. I said, no. I didn't come to buy a guitar. I didn't come to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Phoned my son and he said, Dad, you've looked for nearly 40 years for that and you couldn't find it. And now you've walked into a shop in Athens and seen one. What are the chances? Don't be stupid. And it was my birthday. And my wife said, you've got to get it. You've got to get it.
Yeah.
And so she got it for me. And I brought it home. I'd made a mistake. I picked it up and started playing it. It was a huge mistake. And, it was beautiful. And
You never put it down since.
Suddenly, songs started to come. And pretty soon I had 5 or 6. There's now enough for an album. And I was watching a program with Martin Clunes in. It's called Manhunt, and it was about the case was written by an ex-detective in the Met. And this guy for 17 years had evaded being caught by the Met and had committed all sorts of appalling abuse on elderly people.
Mm.
And he took this guy, as a cold case and eventually cracked it. After 17 years, he cracked it, within a year. And they caught him. They caught the guy who did it. And he, at the end of it, said, if all he's sitting in the car with his sergeant, he said, if these victims had been between the ages of 17 and 30, they'd have been caught. He'd have been caught within a year. We'd have put resources into it. Would have happened. He said, but they weren't. They were old people, and nobody really cared, And his sergeant turned to him as an old couple walked past the car. and said, yeah, you see, the thing is, they're all around us, but we just don't see them. And that just rang a bell. Hang on. And the program finished, Jeanette went to bed. I sat down, quickest song I've ever written. Half an hour later, I had written a song called You Will Be Me. Basically, I was you only yesterday, and tomorrow you'll be me. It starts with, you might not see me at all. And if you do, I'll be in your way, because I'll be the one who's taking too long in the queue while you're waiting to pay. And I'll probably drop my change because I wouldn't use a card. Come on, old man, we haven't got all day. And the chorus goes into You Will Be Me. And we're linking it up with an organisation in Bristol called the Marmalade Trust, who are about loneliness and about helping people who are lonely. And they're not all elderly people. There are a significant number of young people who are reporting feeling isolated. And the dreaded mobile phone hasn't helped.
No, right.
And you know, as I've said, in disconnection of people not contacting with each other, you've only got to try and talk to somebody at your bank to know that it's almost impossible to talk to somebody.
Yeah, right.
Because by the time you've got through press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for that, you've lost the will to live anyway, haven't you?
No, exactly.
And if you're really lucky, you might just get somebody in the end, but almost everything is designed to not have interaction, texting, all those things.
Yeah.
And when the girl at the Marmalade Trust heard the song, she said, that's incredible. I suddenly sat down and thought, do you know, I even texted somebody on the other side of the office this morning instead of talking to them. And I'm working in loneliness. You know, whoa, what's this? And the songs, I thought my mates were going, cool, these are good, aren't they? And you think, yeah, well, your mates always tell you they're good, don't they? All your mates, they're not going to say, that's rubbish, Chris, are they? And so I thought, well, I'll send it to somebody I know in the business. And it was Keith Chegwin's brother, Jeff, who works there. And I thought, he'll tell me. He'll either listen to it and go, you're wasting your time, or what's it? Well, he got back in half an hour and went, this is incredible. You've got to do something with this. You must do something with these. You must. Because they're all different. They're all individual. There's one about apps. Called I've got an app.
Right.
And that's what happened. There was an explosion of creativity, I suppose.
Wow.
And it's also gained a bit of extra momentum because last year I suddenly ended up having open heart surgery in Derriford Hospital in Plymouth, with a new valve and a pacemaker and all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I got phoned up by the consultant last week who'd looked at my latest results and said, you're now a middle-aged man. Oh, really? He said, yeah, you'll be older when you're 90 now. He said, you're a middle-aged man. I don't want to see you again. In fact, I'll probably never see you again. He said, if I do, it'll be in 15 years' time and we'll have to put a new one in. But anyway, no, what has happened to you is fantastic. So I thought, right, okay, let's do it. Let's go for it. So we filmed a video. I'm waiting to see the cut. It's just come through yesterday. And it'll be released in sometime in March.
Brilliant.
And it's called You Will Be Me.
Brilliant. And those who are listening to it, you'll be interested to know that they're not going to hear Bar Bar Black Sheep.
They're not.
It's an adult album. Well, it's
an adult album. It is, yes. I've put one track on it from the old days simply because of something that happened in lockdown.
Right.
And I'd love to have been at the wedding, but a bloke got in touch with me and said, did I have a copy of a song I'd written called Eric the Whale?
Okay.
Because his daughter was getting married and she wanted it played at the wedding. The chorus is yo ho ho, I'm Eric the Whale, that's me. Eric the Whale, something that said, the notion of a girl walking down the aisle to Eric the Whale is beyond me, but she wanted it. So I said to her. And afterwards I thought, well, if that still resonates with people, and then some guy in New York asked me for the same thing during lockdown. He said he was fed up with watching the children's programs the programs he remembered from the old days. Did I have any copies and things? And so I sent him a track of some songs.
Right.
And I thought, yeah, okay, I'll include Eric then. I'll stick Eric on it. Why not?
Still as prominent, yeah.
Yeah.
But the album is. I mean, I guess also the people that have grown up with you, you're going to get those people who some interest who want to buy the album because they know you from that era.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
It's what Jeff said. I said, well, started this, that's where the idea of, Christopher Lillicrap, whatever happened to it,
Mm-hmm.
was people going, yeah. And even if you don't know who he was, well, have a look, because he's that bloke, and look, he's still here.
Yeah,
And he's
it's
doing
done quite
something
a
else
lot.
now.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah.
Why don't he pack up? Yeah, no, he does though.
No, because your doctor said no. He said 15 years to go yet, and plus some.
I've got 15 years. I've got to cram it all in. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, imagine
Do
me
it
at the
all while you
Brits.
can.
That'd be a frightening thought, wouldn't it?
Oh
Yeah.
dear.
Terrible. Terrifying.
Oh, it's still about. Christopher's still about in 20 years' time. You'll outlive
Yeah.
us all, Chris. You
Yeah,
absolutely
well,
will.
yeah.
Wherever you are in
Yeah.
the world, you will outlive us all. So talk to me now then, Chris, because it's very rare. You were heavily involved in making children's TV. You were starring in it, writing in it. So you had no time, dare I say, 75 years ago to watch it because it probably wasn't about as much as it is now. Of course not. But talk to me about a little wee Christopher and what you were watching on the old box, if you were, or were you outside kicking a football?
No, I was outside kicking football.
Right.
We didn't get a telly. I remember when we got it. How old was I? I'd have been about 9 or 10 or something when we got
Right.
a black and white TV.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, they would say, have a nice night and switch it off, and a little dot would go into the middle and
Right.
disappear. And
Right.
they'd play God Save the Queen and things.
Right.
Yeah. That I remember that in black and white. When I was younger, though, up in Yorkshire, you just reminded me of something. I used to go to see Uncle and Aunt who had a farm, and they had a thing called a television. And I
Mhm.
saw that. The first time I saw the television was the Queen's coronation. I remember
Wow.
that. And then we went out to their farm, and I remember a program called Ragtag and Bobtail
Oh yeah.
and the Flower Pot Men.
Oh, watch with Mother Days.
Yeah, Watch Your Mother, yes.
Yeah.
And occasionally Muffin the Mill. But yeah, the Flower Pot Men. Flubba-dub, flubba-dub-dub.
Mhm.
And it was interesting because when I remember as a little kid being quite enamored by that, but it was in black and white, and it was
Mhm.
all the puppets on strings and things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oddly enough, to me that was the charm of it. When I saw they'd done a remake with CGI and it was all nice, clean, and everything, it just didn't work for me because it was too all right. If
Mhm.
you know, too good.
Yeah. Too clean. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's too good.
Yeah.
I quite liked the that was part of the fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it didn't
I mean,
maybe
that was my era when they remade it, but I still vividly go back and remember watching the old black and white on videotapes and loved it with
yeah.
the wooden tops and the little sausage dog and the
God,
piano.
yeah.
Loved
Oh
it.
God, yes. Yeah.
Picture Page, all of those programs, loved them. Much
And the
better
fact
than anything.
and also I remember Charlie Warren, the producer at Thames, said, we've lost, everything's become, by then it was becoming quite fast cut.
Right.
If you look back at some of those old programs like Picture Book, you've got somebody talking in one shot
Yes.
for 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
To kids telling a story.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
And they say, well, kids won't concentrate. No, they won't, because we've taught them not to.
Mm-hmm.
But then I've got a theory about that, because you need 30 seconds to be able to sell a can of Coca-Cola. So we don't want a concentration span to be too long, do we?
No, exactly. You've got to sell nappies nowadays.
They
Yeah.
might start asking questions about what's in the Coca-Cola.
Yeah. 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 I learned everything I learned from Picture Page. The first thing I ever made was a little paper lantern. It took me about 5 minutes to make, but it was so simple.
Yes.
But nowadays they just don't do it like that.
No.
And I wish they did. So funnily enough, talking about that, we were talking a little bit before we started on the pre-chat about how kids' TV has changed. And you have a very interesting view that a lot of people will share nowadays, that involves animation. And of course, if animation is done brilliantly, and I know a lot of people that work in animation that live, in the animated world, it's what they live for. and in the likes of Spain and other countries, they have beautiful illustrators. But when it's mass produced like this with the likes of Peppa Pig, and you mentioned that Bluey is one that's, done enormously well. Talk to me about how kids' TV has changed and your opinions of it nowadays. Of course, also having a child yourself and, watching him grow up, it must have been a bit different, knowing you were involved in it as well.
Well, back in the old days,
yes,
see,
during the war,
we were, Derek Griffiths, me, Tony Arthur, Brian Cant, Rod, Jane and Freddie, Jeffrey Bungle.
Yeah.
We were part of mainstream television. There weren't all these different channels. So we were there in mainstream. At one point, my will tell you a story. It's got 7.5 million viewers. Now, you get 7.5 million viewers now, and you're a major hit. We just got that every week.
Yeah.
But we were part of the mainstream, and used to get. And also, somebody done a bit of research that something like 50% of the people watching it were not under 5. They were sort of over 25. But we were part of that mainstream TV, which meant parents were also watching that with their children. Then the news followed after that, or
that's it.
Whatever,
it was just on, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was part of the mainstream of television.
Yes. Then it was that routine.
We were sold the idea of all these different digital channels which provide a platform for children to be able to. The trouble with that is you've then got to fill it, and then you start to fill it with. I'll get into trouble now. The problem is, if you get into tweeny territory and whatever, that's financially, dare I suggest this, a really good idea, because you can dub it into any language, because those sponge faces just do that. You can make them say anything in Portuguese, Spanish, Greek, whatever. Right? When you had people presenting it, you couldn't do that unless you remade it. And so suddenly financially that became, and cartoons, of course, absolute perfect. And the more you can do of that, the cheaper you can do it, the better. So you send it around the world to be actually done and put together. Doesn't have to be that good. It's just got to fill up the space.
Right.
You do get things that break through, in my opinion, like Bluey, which I think is great. I think it's fantastic, but that's also got what used to put in, a few jokes for the parents or whatever are in Bluey.
Right.
It's very, but but I do think it's unusual in those terms from some of the stuff that I have seen, and I see it because I've got grandchildren, and I go, oh my God, okay, yeah, it's fine, but it's very much wall to wall, zap, 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 and can be translated into any language. It became a financial thing, not about necessarily the creativity of the program, in my humble opinion.
I quite agree. I quite agree.
But and we were part of that mainstream thing. Now, I occasionally see people who apparently are celebrities, but I don't know who they are, because that's become a term that applies to anybody who does a kids program at 3 o'clock in the morning on CBeebies. It just doesn't mean anything.
No.
Whereas in our day, it had a bit more power and a bit more weight. Kind
of had to work as well. It was difficult. Yeah.
And it a lot of it had, because of that, had educational quality in it to actually do things. We might just mention shapes one week, or we might do that. It wasn't just entertainment. It actually had that in it. It was there.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's just not as hard work now.
That did lead occasionally to things that had to be scrapped and couldn't be shown.
Yeah.
The one I did where we had to do long, longer and longest was the theme for a rainbow. And George and Zippy and Jeffrey were rolling out plasticine. The whole thing suddenly descended into mirth and quite obscene, and the Wishbone Jolly. No, we can't do this program. We can't do it.
Oh, that works for Rainbow. That works for Rainbow. Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
But it was I think that's the difference to me. Yes, in theory, you've got all this wonderful access now for loads of kids' programs, but they're not watching adult telly with adults or children's telly with adults.
That's it.
bringing
So they're
people.
not asking the relevant questions and having discussions then. Yeah.
It can be a baby minder, and we're all very concerned about what they might be accessing on the internet.
Right.
Have a look at the telly. What are they
Yeah.
accessing there?
That's it.
If you've got a wonderful smash bang American cartoon where the way you solve a problem is you blow the place to pieces, yeah, that's a really good idea. Let's do that.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And we're all very concerned about the environment, but all these kids, these heroes, are driving around in super duper cars, flying planes, and doing that.
Yeah.
Really?
Mm.
Not sure about that.
No, exactly. And I was very surprised that you were flagged up over the rainbow, considering Buncle George's if you all shared a bath together. What more
Yeah.
could you get?
What
Bonkers.
more could you want? Yes.
That's it.
Well, I
They
mean,
wore pajamas at night.
Morecambe
They
and
walked
Wise
around
slept in the same bed, for God's sake.
exactly with pajamas on, and during the daytime they had nothing. There you go. Couldn't get more bonkers than that. So, but that's the innocence of kids' TV back then. Nobody really, and of course the media later, as Ronnie will say many times, it's very humorous how the media would pick up on all of that stuff, and and it worked wonders for the program because they could then produce books and products on that very thing. So it worked.
No,
Yeah,
but that was those were the golden days.
absolutely. So, Chris, besides from your albums, and we can look forward to seeing the music video to your new single early next year. What else is coming up for Christopher?
God knows. I don't know. I have no idea.
You just live every day as it comes.
Yeah. Now I've learned to do. Yeah. Let's do that. Got a couple of ideas. I've written a book.
Right.
Which got published called Midas under a pseudonym. My son's first name, my wife's maiden name, Dominic Ranger. Yeah.
Right. No reason for that, having a name like Christopher Lillicrap.
Not really. No.
No.
Well, the publishers decided that it should be to distance it from being a children's book because otherwise the wrong people might buy it. So
right. Okay.
That there's a few ideas for odd books and things that are coming into my head, but let's see. Let's get the album on the road first, and then see what happens after that.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up this fascinating podcast,
there's one thing I would like to mention with
yes.
that, though.
Yes,
with
go ahead.
The album is I happen to be it's this serendipitous thing of finding that guitar, that happening, then saying okay, but I can't just me and a guitar, and then discovering the guy lives down the road who is a really heavy metal headbanging rock musician, and said, oh, I'll record those for you, and then started to arrange them and did the most beautiful arrangements that you would not. You look at him and you go, well, I'm not going to pick you to arrange that, but you'd be mistaken because they're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And he's done it with strings and all sorts, and he actually lives literally 5 minutes walk from me.
Right. So what is the kind of feel of the album?
What were the chances? What were the chances?
What's the kind of genre of the album that we're going to listen to?
Yes. Listen to it and tell me, because they seem to fit into different genres.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And as we said, no nursery rhymes bar one. But there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, it's been fantastic. As I mentioned to people that I'm going to be talking to you, your name always gets a little giggle. Oh, yes. We remember Christopher Lillicrap.
I had to change it, don't you?
I was going to say, yes.
Oh, my first series for the BBC.
Right.
Playboard. I was very excited, having failed play school. I was very excited, and the director, Judy Whitfield, she said, we're going for lunch with Cynthia Felgate, who was head of, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
I need to warn you, she's going to ask you to change your name. And I said, well, I'm not. She said, don't wait and see what she says. They don't get excited yet. So I'm spending the whole time with this lunch thinking, is it going to be Smith, Higgins, Jones? What?
Right.
And she said, we got to the end of it, said, Chris, there's just one thing I want to talk about, and that's your name. I thought, here we go. Right. It's been building up to this.
Yeah.
At the moment, you're Chris Lillicrap. And And I said, yes, because that was my registered name with Equity. It's Chris Lillicrap. She said, yeah,
Yeah.
we'd like you to Christopher. I said, Christopher what? She said, Lillicrap. Why? And she said, to put it bluntly, Chris Lillicrap, all you hear is the crap. If you do three
Right.
syllables, Christopher Lillicrap, it takes the emphasis off all the crap.
I see.
And I thought, sorry, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I got in touch with Equity. There isn't another one. Well, there wouldn't be, would there?
No, exactly.
Christopher Lillicrap. Yeah. Would you change your name? Yeah. From Chris to Christopher. Oh. And I'd sat there worrying all this time for
Yeah.
nothing.
No.
Yeah.
No, there you go. That's a story and a half. Cynthia fell.
And I once went for a commercial. An American director said to me, "Gee, Lillicrap, why the hell don't you change it?" I said, "Will you forget it?" He went, "No, you got a point there. No, you
There
keep
you
it."
go. There you go. You can't forget it, can you? You can't forget it.
And somebody
and
asked me if I'd made it up. You wouldn't make that up.
of course you
My,
would.
my father's name.
No, would you want to make something like that up? I don't know.
No.
I don't think so. But it does make you distinguishable. And yes, and Chris, it has been, fascinating talking to you about your glittering career, and you're still as strong today. And we'll look forward to seeing all of the work you've done. You've got the book out there that people can see under your not so stylish name. But they can still go and see that. A completely different read, of course, as will be all the music that has reflected your recent.
Stick in chrislillicrap.com and you'll find whatever happened to.
You'll find whatever happened to, and search for Christopher on social media too, like I do, and you'll be able to find out everything there. He'll keep you updated. But of course, if you want to find out about any of the podcasts that I do here, and why we should listen to this podcast, Christopher is going to tell you right now.
Well, you should listen to it because it's absolutely brilliant.
Like Christopher.
Yeah.
There you go. It's just brilliant. It's about his life. There we go. So don't forget, everybody, to click the subscribe button and the notification bell to get updated on everything in this current run that is airing in the new year. And I will look forward to seeing everybody in the next podcast. Now, Christopher, you have been my blast from the past in a podcast. You're still here. Nobody's forgotten you yet. Yet, I say, and long may it continue, because if you want to know what happened to Christopher, he's right there, and he's looking the same as he did 40 years ago on Rainbow.
If only.
If only. I'm not lying, I promise you. Just ask that guy. He doesn't age either. Not a wrinkle in El Nombre's face. Absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you for joining me. And,
thank you, Tom.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. Will you please do me the honor, as I do with all guests? Normally, they have a character that's synonymous to them. You can choose whatever you want, but sign us out in a character.
In a character?
Yes.
Oh, it's easy. The guy behind you.
Right.
Adios, amigos, and keep smiling.
Bye-bye, Chris.